Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers and his future in the NFL if he wants to continue to play. It was confirmed today, but there was a lot of rumors over the weekend that the New York Jets were done with Aaron Rodgers. And today, the Jets confirmed it. They released a statement, but it gets deeper than just that. If they cut Aaron Rodgers before June 1st, they take on a $49 million cap hit in 2025. So I think that they'll go out there, they'll try to lessen the blow and try to split it over a course of a couple of seasons, similar to what the Denver Broncos did with Russell Wilson. But regardless, this was a terrible tenure with Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. His first year, he only played a couple of snaps against the Buffalo Bills right before he tore his Achilles. And this year was the year from hell. I will say this. Aaron Rodgers can still play in the NFL, but he has to go out there and he has to alter his attitude, and he also has to do a lot of things by the book. He has to be treated just like any other player on the roster. It was a report that came out by Diana Rossini, who has done great work with ESPN, and she has kept her finger on the pulse with the New York Jets dating back to when they fired Robert Saleh after the Minnesota Vikings game. A report came out that the general manager and Aaron Glenn, the brand new head coach, they sat down Aaron Rodgers and they basically told him this: in order to stay with the New York Jets, you have to meet some criteria here. You have to go out there and show up to all of training camp, not just for 1 to 2 days. You have to show up for all the training camp, and no more Pat McAfee show during the season. You have to be all in with the Jets. Now, I do not know what Aaron Rodgers' response was, but Aaron Glenn, he wanted to take over full control of the Jets just with the general manager. So I do believe this was a great move by the Jets. But I am going to take up for Aaron Rodgers in this aspect. Not all of the Jets' shortcomings were due to Aaron Rodgers and his fault. Not all of it. Did he play the best? No. But you look at the Jets, they were terribly ran by ownership. Whenever your owner is judging trades off of video games ratings, that's when you know that you are in trouble. And when I look at Aaron Rodgers, the numbers this year, they were not bad. But Aaron Rodgers is still not a top 10 quarterback in the league anymore. He was 8th in passing yards, 3,897 passing yards this year. 28 passing touchdowns. That was tied for the 7th most in the NFL this season, to 11 passing interceptions. But I can name 10 to 15 quarterbacks better than Aaron Rodgers, even though he was top 10 in touchdowns and yards. Lamar Jackson is better than him. You have Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold was better this season, and the same with Bo Nix. So when I look at Aaron Rodgers, he's not even a top 15 quarterback in the league anymore. But for these couple of teams, he can work out for them, but he has to change his attitude. In the past, he was a headache with the Green Bay Packers. He was clashing with the head coaches. He was clashing with the general managers. You can't have this with your new organization. And with the New York Jets, he came in, he was the de facto leader because he won the Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers a decade ago, because he won so many MVPs in his career. And let's be honest here, even though the last couple of years of his career hasn't been the greatest, he is still a Hall of Fame quarterback, especially in my opinion. But when I look at the numbers, that backs it up. But Aaron Rodgers has to come over to his new team if he wants to continue to play. And he has to do what Tom Brady did with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He told the Buccaneers when he came into that locker room, what I did with the Patriots, that doesn't matter anymore because I'm here to help the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win. Aaron Rodgers can't come over to a brand new team and have the same attitude how he had with the Green Bay Packers. He has to show up to training camp. It's the reason why Aaron Rodgers has struggled to gel with young wide receivers. Him and Garrett Wilson, they got on the same page on the back half of the season. But early in the year, that wasn't the case. That's why they brought in Devontae Adams. And we saw Garrett Wilson, go out there and have good games with Zach Wilson, who is one of the worst starting quarterbacks that you can have, because they had that chemistry down in training camp. They had that chemistry down in the offseason. You can't have Aaron Rodgers going out there and saying, I have better things to attend than training camp. Now, if it's a death in the family or if it's a very extreme emergency, go out there. Take time away from the team. I'm sure the team will be okay with that. But you just can't miss training camp just because he's an older player. When Aaron Rodgers was younger, he'll show up to training camp. He wanted to earn his stripes behind Brett Favre. As you get older, You don't want to go to training camp anymore. And a lot of Hall of Famers have said this on different podcasts. They don't want to go out there and deal with the offseason grind anymore. They just want to show up, go to the game. Unfortunately, you can't do that. But when I talk about the teams that could use Aaron Rodgers right now, the first one that I think of is the Tennessee Titans. Easily. The Tennessee Titans have Coach Callahan as their head coach. The first year was terrible, but it wasn't all on Coach Callahan. Their offense took a major step back because Will Levis was a turnover machine this year. And another reason why I bring up the Tennessee Titans, the executive already came out and he said they're not going to go out there and pass on generational talent with the first overall pick. So that means that you're going to be in the market to possibly bring in a guy like Sam Darnold, bring in another bridge quarterback. Now, Sam Darnold, he made the man a lot of money for the next 3 to 4 years. You bring in Aaron Rodgers on a cheap deal. Look at what the Steelers just did with Russell Wilson. You could bring him in on a 1-year deal while the Jets are still paying his salary because they're going to pay him regardless. He has guarantees on that contract, whether he's with the Jets or not. So you go out there, you bring in Aaron Rodgers. You have pieces on the outside with Nick Westbrook-Ikine, who is a very good wide receiver, who was a touchdown machine for majority of the year, playing with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. And Aaron Rodgers, right now on his worst day, he is better than both of those quarterbacks. He's just older. You have Calvin Ridley, who's a true number 1 wide receiver. You have Chig Okongwu at the tight end spot, who is a very good tight end. You have 2 talented running backs in Tony Pollard, who had over 1,000 rushing yards this year. And you have Tajay Spears, who was a very good backup to have alongside Tony Pollard. The offensive line is still a huge question mark because the offensive line for the first half of the season, it was atrocious, especially the right side of the offensive line. But there's a lot of potential with this line when you have Coach Callahan and his dad working extensively to fix this group. Because you have J.C. Latham at the left tackle position, Peter Skoronski, left guard. Cushenberry is coming back from a torn Achilles injury. We'll see if he can bounce back. So there's pieces on this offensive line they have to grow and they have to develop. But when I look at Aaron Rodgers, you bring over that veteranship. Don't come in and try to be the dictator. Just come in, fall in line with your head coach, and this could be a smooth process for the Tennessee Titans. They could trade back from the first overall pick, or they could still go out there and select Abdul Carter. You put him on that defense. And they had the second best passing defense in the NFL this year, second best in total defense. You have Abdul Carter with Harold Landry and with Simmons. All those guys together that can get to the quarterback. You now have 3 pass rushers with T'Vondre Sweat that can stop the run, get to the passer. And you bring back L'Jarius Sneed, who had a down year this year, but he's a veteran. I think that he can bounce back. So that could be a solid option for the Tennessee Titans. And then you can worry about your quarterback position for the next 1 or 2 years in the next NFL draft cycles. Because right now, when I look at the draft for quarterbacks, it's not the best. You have Shedeur Sanders, you have Cam Ward. After that, it's a huge drop-off. And going out there and bringing in a guy like Aaron Rodgers, hey, it's not the best deal, but it's definitely not the worst. It's better than having Will Levis and Mason Rudolph out there. The second team, the Cleveland Browns, you may call me crazy, because the Cleveland Browns, historically, they're one of the worst franchises in football history. But they have a very good head coach in Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski has gotten the Cleveland Browns to the NFL playoffs not once, but twice in his tenure. Hell, they even won a playoff game with Kevin Stefanski. He was out for that game dealing with the pandemic issue, but he still had a huge influence on the team. They defeated the Steelers in that matchup with Baker Mayfield. You bring over Aaron Rodgers because Deshaun Watson, he's terrible. And he may even miss all of this upcoming season anyway. He tore his Achilles earlier in the year, and he re-tore it again, rehabbing. And that's one of the worst contracts in all of sports, including baseball, football, and basketball. You could bring in Aaron Rodgers to a veteran minimum, similar to what the Tennessee Titans should do. And I saw Kevin Stefanski go out there and make the NFL playoffs with Joe Flacco. He called him off his couch. They made the playoffs. And right now, I would take Aaron Rodgers over Joe Flacco. I would take Aaron Rodgers over DTR. I would take him over Deshaun Watson and Jameis Winston. There is still talent with Aaron Rodgers. It's just his attitude. But you put him in this system, I think that he's more tailor-made for the system with Coach Stefanski than he is with Coach Callahan. But he can fit both systems. You look at the Cleveland Browns. The offensive line, they're fully healthy. They're solid. And that's going to play a huge part of this also because Aaron Rodgers doesn't have the same mobility that he once had before he tore that Achilles. Even in his last year with the Packers, we saw him roll out to the right and still make some of those crazy throws. He's not capable of doing that on a weekly basis anymore because of that torn Achilles injury. But you have David Njoku, who's a top receiving tight end. We saw what he was able to do with Jameis Winston and with Joe Flacco. You have Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. I look at the running back position. I think Jerome Ford is going to be the starting running back over the next few seasons. Because I look at Nick Chubb, that brutal knee injury and that foot injury, he's not the same running back. He was only averaging 3 yards a carry this season. And you have the defense that you have. And if you go and you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you may try to pay Myles Garrett a little more money to try to bring him back. He requested a trade. Now, I want you guys to understand something here also. The Browns don't have to go out there and they don't have to honor the trade of Myles Garrett. We've seen this before with players in the past. They'll go out there, they'll request a trade. The ownership will say, no, you're going to play on this team. Look at Trey Hendrickson. He's in this division. He wanted a contract extension with the Bengals. The Bengals said, not right now. He requested a trade. And the Bengals said, no, go out there and play. They can do that with Myles Garrett. He could hold out in training camp. He can hold out for a couple of games. That could possibly happen. But I'll look at the Cleveland Browns right now. They are dead set on keeping Myles Garrett. So bringing in a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who should not cost a lot of money, he's not going to cost draft capital to get. You bring him in, a veteran quarterback, it should help you contend in this division. He's not going to get any of these teams to the NFL playoffs, but you just want to compete on a weekly basis. And I believe that's what Aaron Rodgers can give you. I'm fully aware that this is the same Aaron Rodgers this year. In that game against the Buffalo Bills where they got blown out in, he then scored a touchdown. Tyrod Taylor came in and he scored those touchdowns. But once again, a bad organization with the New York Jets that are trending into the right direction with Aaron Glenn and their new ownership as a whole. You could talk about the Las Vegas Raiders right here. I'll scratch my head with that idea because the Raiders are trying to get stability with their organization. You could bring in Aaron Rodgers, but I believe Russell Wilson would be tailor-made to play with Pete Carroll yet again. And you have a brand new head coach with Pete Carroll. Now, Aaron Rodgers with Vegas would be very interesting because you have Brock Bowers, you have Jacoby Myers at the wide receiving position. They need to build that offensive line. They have a lot of money to play with in free agency. They could bring in a lot of talent to surround Aaron Rodgers, but that's another possible destination with the Raiders. But the Raiders are more than just a quarterback away from contending, especially in that division. But I'll look at it from this standpoint. You go out there, you draft a guy like Jackson Dart or Will Howard in the second and third round. If you're a Raiders fan, I would say look out for Will Howard in the second and third round because Chip Kelly is their brand new offensive coordinator. He's the former offensive coordinator for Ohio State. And he helped Will Howard go out there and win a national championship this year against Notre Dame. And Will Howard was a very good quarterback all season long in college. And he said a lot of positive things about Chip Kelly, and Chip Kelly loves Will Howard. So you could possibly bring him in, let him develop underneath Aaron Rodgers for a year or two. That could work out. So when I look at Aaron Rodgers, it's options on the table, but he has to go out there and he has to want this. That's the thing here. He has to show up to training camp. He has to stop going on the Pat McAfee show, especially when you're losing football games. Now, I'm more lenient on this. I know a lot of fans are not, and a lot of athletes aren't. But when I look at this situation when it comes to athletes and having podcasts, you can have other ventures besides your job. You can go out there, you can host your own podcast, but you have to win games. You can't put more effort in your media craft than you do on the field. Some organizations, they view that as a distraction, while others don't. I look at Travis Kelce. He has a podcast with his brother, Jason Kelce. You don't hear many people talking about Travis Kelce and the fact that he has his podcast because the Chiefs win a lot of football games. This was not a problem with Aaron Rodgers going on the Pat McAfee show until the Jets are losing a lot of football games and Aaron Rodgers is playing terribly. And it is a bad look. I will give you that for your star quarterback to go out there. And he was a star quarterback for the Jets because they put all their faith in him to try to turn that organization completely around. And that was the Jets' biggest mistake. But they wanted Aaron Rodgers to go out there and be the face of the franchise. It's a bad look when you're on Pat McAfee show every single week and you're getting blown out. It's a bad look when your head coach just got fired and Pat McAfee is asking you these questions. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers has to go out there. He has to be quiet. He can't talk to the media. From my understanding, he hates to go to the media. Well, all the negative things that he says about the media, all the negative things that he says about ESPN, but he's close friends with Pat McAfee. The number one option here, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, may retire. And I'm just going to be honest here. because it has gotten uglier for him. This was not a terrible year for him statistically, but when you go and you look at him on the film, it wasn't great. It was easily the worst season that he has had in his career on the film. But he can still give you a lot of good things to offer. But you just can't let him be that star quarterback. He can't be that dictator in your organization. And I want to really touch on this before I let you guys go. Davante Adams wanted to be traded from the Raiders. Aaron Rodgers did not go out there. He did not say, go get Davante Adams from the Raiders. Davante Adams wanted to lead the Raiders. He had two teams that he wanted to go play with. The Saints, because of Derek Carr, that's his former college teammate, and Aaron Rodgers, because that's his former teammate with the Green Bay Packers. Davante Adams, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, I will not feel bad if he does not retire with a ring, because he has had opportunities to go out there and to be placed into better situations, but he wants to play with his friends. He plays football like how a high school kid would play football. They want to go out there. They want to play with their friends. And I don't have a problem with that. But when I look at Davante Adams, he now wants to play for a contender. You could have done this in the past. And Aaron Rodgers, he did not make the decision to go out there and trade for him. That was Woody Johnson, the owner with the Jets. He went out there, he traded the pick to go out there and bring in Davante Adams. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And you can't bring in Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers either. If you're the Tennessee Titans, don't bring in Davante Adams. You bring in Aaron Rodgers. If you're the Cleveland Browns, don't bring in Davante Adams. Go out there, bring in Aaron Rodgers, treat him just like how you would treat everyone else on that roster. And hopefully you can still get some of the best out of him. But the days of him being an MVP and throwing the football around the field, similar to a Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, like how he used to, those days are behind him. But if you have a strong defense, a very good run game, and a very good offensive line, and a very good offensive coordinator, I think that Aaron Rodgers can still give you a lot of good things on the field. I'm not saying that he's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback anymore. But if he wants to play for one more season, it's on the table with those teams. You can also bring up the Steelers, but at the same time, I look at that situation. You have Justin Fields that you could bring back. You have Russell Wilson that you could bring back. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers, at this age right now with Coach Tomlin, I don't think that's going to work out. Because a lot of people in the national media, they'll say, Coach Tomlin, he's not going to put up with that. Oh, really? Coach Tomlin put up with a lot with Big Ben. Coach Tomlin put up a lot with Antonio Brown. That culture with the Steelers, you can say that it is great, but at the same time, the player management with Coach Tomlin is not the greatest. And I can see him going out there and trying to talk to a guy like Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to look at the Aaron Rodgers pedigree, and he's going to let him go out there and call in those shots. But let me know in the comment section below, what should Aaron Rodgers do in the future, and what team should go out there and bring him in? And I know what a lot of you guys are going to say. He should retire, and I do agree with you. But if he wants to play, those are the select teams that I'm looking at. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.